Today's High Performance Podcast is brought to you by Josh Phegan Digital. It's where you'll find our incredible short courses. In under 60 minutes, you'll grow all the key skills, covering specific areas like how to hire an assistant, grow a team, to list better properties, to grow better fees, and to master your pipeline. Welcome to High Performance, the podcast featuring Josh Phegan and Alexander Phillips. Alexander, one of the things that is really interesting is that, when you train how to be an auctioneer, you learn a lot of what they go to call filler language. So you've got a bid, for example, and you're waiting for the next bid to come in. And so there's like a list of things that you can say. So, thanks very much for your bidding, sir, at $1 million now, and we're looking for 1-1 if we can. At 1-1 if we can, but at $1 million we've got. And they start to fill this language. And I was thinking a lot about that, about, watching agents, either in an in-room auction or on an on-site auction. And they've got to go and walk up to a buyer and, they've got to try and either encourage that buyer to bid, or they've got to try and get that bidder to bid one more time. And often that extra bid could be the difference between not meeting reserve and actually hitting the reserve. What are some of the things that you have, practiced or really thought about when you're working an auction or an auction room floor to try to get a bidder to spend a little more, or even just to get them to start the bidding?
Well, Josh, like you just said, it's one more bid from owning the property or not owning it. You might knock that one buyer out. Why don't you come in with 50 grand? But I think where most, and you've probably seen this a lot, where it's quite a, it's like you're in a theatre or you're on stage, and it's like doing it, it's like doing it like what you do on stage every day, doing a talk. And a lot of agents, I think, don't actually know what to do because they're probably quite nervous and embarrassed. But I think that why that comes into play is because they haven't done the buyer work. Mm-hmm. They actually haven't understood the buyer. They don't feel comfortable walking up to the buyer. The buyer might be there with their older parents who are controlling the scenario. But if you've got that rapport with them and you've built up the rapport, and you probably even explain before the auction, guys, I'm going to come over and I'm going to have a few conversations with you during the auction if you're not bidding. If you have that conversation before you go into the auction, they're prepared for it and you don't feel like they're going to say no to you. So a lot of that comes down to how you've run the campaign, what involvement you've had. If you're not involved and your offsite or associates involved, well, they should be talking to that buyer. So they need to have the confidence to deal with that buyer. They need to be trained up on how to actually have those conversations to get that extra bid, to ensure that, if you don't buy this property, we might be, looking around for another 6 months. We don't have anything else, available. Try and own it today. There's so many, different, conversations you have instead of going 25, why don't you go 50 and try and knock them out? So I think, it's pre-framing and going into that auction fully prepared on all the different scenarios, you mentally, the vendors mentally and the buyers mentally. So they're fully across, what might happen in the conversations that you might be having.
Often I'll go and have a bit of a look at some of your open for inspections, and I heard you rolling out some dialogue at one over a year ago, and it was something along the lines of, why this one and why now? And whether or not it was natural or whether or not it was actually pre-rehearsed, the interesting conversation is I watched what it did to the buyer, and they said, Alex, we really like this one because of the northeast aspect, and we're going to do something because we've got a job relocation. And I was like, well, that's the beginning of that intent in that relationship. So you're starting to understand that. So when I'm teaching newer agents, I say, hey, why this one? Why else? Why now? Or why this one? It's got the high span garage, which is good for four-wheel drive. Why else? It's got no stairs, which is great for us. And why now? Because we sold last weekend. Now there's real intent in that buyer. Getting buyers prepared, getting them back for another look at the property prior to the auction, being in a position that you've built that relationship, doing some buyer coaching to say, hey guys, this is what you're going to do. You're going to need to open it up. This is where you see value. Jones Street there underpins the asking price, or where we're at in terms of our price guide. If you start at the guide, what we often find, the first person who bids is the one who buys. When we're on the auction room floor, guys, at the end of the day, you're 10,000 away from probably buying the home you want. Could you give us a bit of 10 if it made the difference in owning it? And just being in a position that you've actually got a genuine relationship. And you're so strong on that, where if you have no relationship, no wonder why there's no relationship on the auction room floor. If you've started to build a relationship of relevance, and that doesn't take long to build, reference recent sales, know what's actually happening in market, know about the new ones that are coming to market that have a deficiency in the floor plan, or literally, this is better than Jones Street. You know that because Jones Street doesn't have the backyard access that this one does. And then you start to actually get the buyer to be in a position where they've actually got to move to act. That changes a lot about the way that you go and do the work. But Alex, I've also seen you move very quickly that if it doesn't sell at auction, that then you're negotiating with those parties and trying to get people back for another appointment later that afternoon, trying to get an extra offer from those particular buyers and get it done whilst you're still under those auction conditions. And I think that that's a skill set, right, to make sure that you're prepared to go and do that. Whereas most agents are, the buyer runs off and they don't want to answer the phone calls and do those things ever again. Whereas like literally, hey, look, I'm going to call you later today. Let's chat this afternoon. Obviously it hasn't happened now, but there's no reason that you can't be the owner later today. How important is it to have that never give up philosophy in your buy work?
Josh, I think that's where you're going to probably get a sale versus no sale. So that's about making sure that you've again pre-framed the post-auction, pre-framed with that buyer that you've got till tonight to buy it unconditionally, and then making sure the vendor's aware that if you don't sell it today, that you're going to be selling it for less later potentially. So, what do you want to do? Do you want to deal with this now, or do you want to go to market? Do you want to do another auction campaign? How does it look like? Probably one of the best questions you can ask is, in 4 weeks' time, if you've had this offer, would you take it? And most vendors probably say no, but deep down inside, they do want to take it.
And that's a really important conversation. Learn what to do. And I love how you're just giving them a plethora of options there. You know what? Let's just sell the thing. I don't want to go through another 4 weeks of this. And that's the important part. And you know what? In about 8 weeks' time, they realised they actually sold for a record sale price. And that's the important thing, is you've got to realise the emotions are there, and you've got to cut through those emotions to get through to the clarity that this is actually the number to go and sell the property.